There's the pea shot, and you can grow your penis by 2 inches. Is this true?
The size of your penis depends all the blood vasculature in the penis, and you can extend it. Pharma, profoundly threatened. I'm going to sell you insulin for the rest of your life. It is an amazing business. And now comes something that cures. It's a complete disruption of medicine as we know it. Tons of money was spent to make the population believe that stem cells are dangerous. These stem cells in our bone marrow, not only can they become blood cells, but they can pretty much become anything in the body. It's a discovery akin to the discovery antibiotics that changed humanity. Injection is one thing, but just triggering the release of your own stem cells from your own bone marrow, boosting your natural repair process. And we can show reversal of severe heart disease, reversal of Parkinson, COPD, atherosclerosis, hypertension, kidney failure, liver failure, COPD, Parkinson, Alzheimer's.
Wow. You know, now that there's this thing called stem cells, you can, if you get hurt, you can regenerate yourself and heal yourself very quickly and easily.
Tell me more.
Oh, yeah, right. That's why you're here. So I did stem cells a few years ago. I went down to Costa Rica with Dave Asprey, and I did a few treatments. I did plasmapheresis. I did a stem cell facial. And I also did intravenous stem cells, but they weren't mine. So I have a lot of questions because I got kind of sick for a few days after and
Where were they injected? Just intravenous?
Well, it was a facial. So they did microneedling and then they injected, but you were under twilight anesthesia. So I don't really have a good feel for exactly how it went, but basically they did microneedling and then they injected. And then it was intravenous for the other stem cells. And yeah, I mean, I definitely broke out a little bit and I was pretty sick for a couple days and I recovered, but yeah, it was a little bit of a hump afterwards.
What was, when you say you were sick, what was it, like fever?
Run down, like the flu, very tired. I didn't feel nauseous. I just felt like the flu.
Yeah, there's some people, it's not common, but there's some people, and it's a various degrees. Some people can get what they refer to, I mean, it's a catch, it's like an umbrella. It's hard to define, but they call it a cytokine storm. So your stem cells start to kick in and they release way more communication molecules than they should. And I know that I did not witness the case, but the clinic where I was working at had that case of somebody, they injected stem cells for, I think she was about 25 with cerebral palsy. And they just tried whatever they could do because she was not verbal. She was not very functional. So they gave her that shot. And within about 2-3 hours, she went into convulsion, coma. I mean, it was severe, but the doctor had seen it before. So he basically says, don't panic, just relax, stay there with her. And within a matter of about 6 to 8 weeks, she started to speak and her, she improved dramatically.
Wow.
But there are people for which for a short period of time, sometimes it looks like it's getting worse.
I also did EBU, which is the dialysis essentially where you clean, for those who don't know, in one line that pulls the blood, it goes through filtration, it goes through ozone, and then it goes back in another arm, another vein. And after the first time I did that, I also got sick for a couple days very similarly. So Dave was thinking that it was sort of like a mast cell reaction, almost like a allergic reaction, but just like a hyper response. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you could. I mean, when these things happen, it's open as to what it could be. Sure. If we don't dig a little bit deeper to find what it is. It could be totally.
Yeah. Okay. Well, explain to everybody then, let's just get the basics out about stem cells. Because I have a lot of questions too, because having done that and then just sort of the difference between your own versus someone else's. And let's get the basics down first. So what is a stem cell and what is its function? The days are getting longer and spring is right around the corner. That means more outdoor activities, fresh energy, and a great time to refresh your wellness routine with a great tasting daily health drink. How does AG1 make it easy to support your body with one simple habit? Unlike other supplements that come and go, AG1 is a habit that actually sticks because you can feel the difference. I've noticed so many benefits since drinking AG1 over the past few years. AG1 can help support your digestion, your energy levels, your skin health from within, cravings, and so many more things. Have you noticed any of these? When it comes to my health, I want something I can trust, and that's why I choose AG1. With science-backed ingredients and real benefits I can feel, AG1 makes it easy to support overall wellness every day. And that's why I've been partnering with AG1 for so long. And AG1 is offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs with your first box. So make sure you check out drinkag1.com/prettyintense and get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/prettyintense to start your new year on a healthier note.
I find that the easiest way to explain what is a stem cell is to first describe what's not a stem cell. Like everything in your body, a cell of your muscle, a cell of your skin, a cell of your pancreas, they do one specific thing. They never transform, and they never multiply to a large extent. So a cell of your muscle contract, that's the only thing it does. A cell of your pancreas will secrete insulin, that's the only thing that it does. A stem cell is at the other end of the spectrum. A stem cell, as its entity of being a stem cell, is really nothing, meaning like it's blank cell. Its role is when it's going to transform into another type of cells. So traditionally, stem cells, what we learn in med school, probably to this day, it's sad to say, but probably to this day, what is taught in med school is that stem cells are precursors to blood cells, red blood cells, lymphocytes, platelets. That's all they do. And what really was the turning point of, not the turning point, but at the turning point of the century, the start of stem cell research as we know it today, is to discover that these stem cells in our bone marrow, not only can they become blood cells, but they can pretty much become anything in the body. So they are the body's repair system. And this is what has opened this new science, which, and I'm sure we'll talk about it today, talking about it in terms of injection is fascinating, but it's the tip of the iceberg. The meaning of stem cells in our lives go so much deeper. I think it's a discovery akin to the discovery of antibiotics that changed humanity. I think it's the same thing, but it's not the injection. Not that they're not good, but that's not really what is going to be like a societal turning point.
Does it matter where they come from? Because you mentioned bone marrow. And I know I work with a company called M-Site. They have a PRP machine is one thing that they have, and it is like the highest concentration of PRP. And they also do stem cells as well. And so my dad has gone to have his shoulders done. He had his ankle done, and he basically has had like full recovery of his shoulders, except for one because there was already scar tissue, and your Achilles just takes a long time. So he went from every step having pain to no pain at all, just sometimes tightness. So in the course of about 6 months. So, I mean, where are there different kinds of stem cells then?
You will get probably, if you ask 10 different experts in the field, you'll probably get 10 different answers. There's a lot, like anything in the whole world of medicine and pharma, there's just a lot of finance. Let's put it that way in all of this. So it will skew the answer that you're getting. So I'll try to get, as objective as possible. First thing to consider, scientists love putting name on things, classify them, putting them into a bag and put a label on it. That's X stem cells, and that's what it is. I believe that stem cells are way more labile than that. They can move and they can become so many different things in our bodies that the way that we define them is probably not really having as much importance as we think. But let's say that we go along with the nomenclature. We started at the beginning of the century thinking that our stem cells in our bone marrow was really they were not true stem cells. They could only become blood cells. So people started to look for other types of stem cells that would be like more younger, more potent. So the collection of umbilical cord stem cells started. Then along the way, we discovered fat stem cells also can be effective. They can be cultivated. Air follicle stem cells can be pretty impressive. Dental pulp stem cells. Air follicle stem cells. You can take an air follicle, extract stem cells that are into your hair follicles, grow them in air. So, I'm sorry, I'm French.
Got it. No, that's all right. I was like, somebody can breathe stem cells? This is spectacular. Hair. Okay, I'm so sorry. Hair follicle. Okay, like the hair itself. Wow.
Yeah, the hair. So you can extract stem cells, and studies have shown if you inject them in the spinal cord, you can actually reverse spinal cord lesion. like take a paralyzed mouse and make the mouse start to move again. So there are a lot of sources of stem cells. So the question is, where are they easiest to extract, and where is their commercial application the most valuable, the most financially feasible, if you want. And that's really what dictates the markets at this point. So right now you will, and then along the way, we discovered that no, the stem cells in your bone marrow are actually pretty effective too. They can do just about anything in the body. The only two negatives, if you want, of bone marrow stem cells is that to go and extract them is not by itself a pleasant process. I'm not saying to say it's difficult, but to go into your bone marrow with a long, big needle is not the same thing as going and taking a little bit of a few grams
Get in there, drill in there.
There you go. So it's not a convenient place to get stem cells, and that's why it's been a little bit put aside. What is growing fast right now is umbilical cord stem cells. There are issues, there are some risk with umbilical cord stem cells that, quite frankly, have not really showed up right now so far. So I'm not saying they're significant risk, but they exist. Two of them are, from the time you collect that sample, the quality control that is used to really maintain the purity of that sample is such that today the greatest and the most common complaints with the FDA is sepsis. You get an injection of stem cells and it generates an infection. Yeah. So I'm not saying it's very common. It is the most commonly reported. But if you go to a place that really you pay good money and they are a good lab, it's like anything in medicine. You can control for it, so it's not a problem. The other one was more sort of an expressed risk over the years that I still don't think is a big risk, which is you get genetic material from somebody that you don't know, and you don't know if there is in there some sort of disease that is genetically there that can manifest itself into the recipient when you receive these stem cells.
Is that part of the testing process of the quality of it? Process. Can't they genetically test? Can't they test for disease? Can't they do that with the...
They can do this, but it's like, the real world of science, not the marketing world of science, but the real world of science is that you can only test what you know what to test for. So is there something that you don't know that you're testing for and you could have an impact? So all of this, I'm saying it is a very, very small risk. All I'm saying is that about a year ago, a study was published exposing this thing for the first time. They basically inserted a gene coding for human Alzheimer's disease in a mouse, and then took stem cells from that mouse, injected them into another mouse, and that recipient mouse developed Alzheimer's. So it showed that you can do all the testing, all of that, it's fine. I'm saying the possibility of transferring some sort of genetic material and causing a problem, it exists. Is it a risk? I don't think so. But I'm pointing these simply because I think in the next 5-10 years, other things will develop in the whole world of stem cell research that will sort of eliminate most of these risks. V cells, you may have heard of V cells. So very small embryonic-like stem cells. They have had other names, blastomere-like stem cells. Essentially, it evokes the fact that they have a behavior and potential that is just as big as an embryonic stem cell, but they're very small. So
where do you get them from?
From your blood. So you take a blood sample, you spin your blood. Normally they'll call this PRP.
Exactly.
Exactly. And we know that PRP repairs, regenerate, all of that. What was not known, and still today, I come across people who do PRP and they say, but it's not stem cells, it's PRP. And then I need to explain them, it is stem cells. Because in that fraction, there is a very small stem cells, about the size of a platelet. Platelets don't have DNA. So you take this whole concentrate of platelets, and if you tag them for stem cells or you dye them for DNA, you see that there's small population of cells in there that have DNA. They tag for stem cells. They are stem cells. Wow. And they are extremely potent. Wow. So for yours.
I just had that done under my eyes. He called it PRF, but... Correct. What is the F instead? Why is it an F instead of a P?
Fraction instead of plate-rich plasma. So plasma instead of fraction. I believe that the fraction normally gives you more of the growth factors.
Oh yeah, well that would make sense.
But I'm not saying that it's really better Now that we know that you have these stem cells that are into, in that platelet fraction. But anyway, so these are like the different types of stem cells that people are exposed to right now.
Mm.
Umbilical cord, bone marrow, fat stem cells, V cells. These are probably the one that you will find the most on the marketplace.
When you were talking about the Alzheimer's scenario with the mouse and transferring it, and the fact that essentially stem cells are sort of like, it's like open data, like ready to be programmed. And I think about consciousness, and I'm getting a little bit of woo woo in my life. It just makes me get into this space of like, and like the double slit experiment, when you look at it, observation creates something, it organizes things. Like I just kind of wonder how much woo woo there is in stem cells, given the fact that it can be programmed. I'm very curious that the next thing I want to ask is, how does it get programmed in the body naturally? And then how does it know what to be programmed to when it's injected into the body? But I just think about the spiritual side of it, and how, consciousness is sort of something that turn the dial to a different radio station, or, these stem cells sort of just tuning into a different sort of free, like channel. It's like, I don't know. It's very interesting. And I would imagine this is where science is trying to figure out how the hell it does what it does.
Yeah, I mean, we can go as deep as you want in that as well. When I quit my PhD, when I realized that I'm studying rat brain, cat brain, mouse brain to study the process of memory, and I'm thinking, but we have past lives and we have memories from them, and they're gone with the brain that is eaten by the worms. So it's not in the brain, and it created this sort of fraction. So I left and I went to live in a monastery for a while. If I go a little bit earlier, I was interested in the mind at a pretty young age, 13, 14. I just started to dive into these kinds of books, and which has led me that in order to understand the mind, I wanted to study the brain. So that's what pushed me to go and study neurophysiology. I was at the Montreal Neurological Institute. And there's just a point along the way in my PhD where it kind of dawns on me. I cannot say like it's one specific event.
Sure.
It's sort of over time to realize I'm actually not knowing anything about the mind. I'm just studying the brain. And then it became clear that I would know more about the mind by really diving into the mind. So it was more meditation. So it was more like that part. And I would say the more I went deeper in that area, the more what I was doing in studying memory with electrodes and brain cells, I just lost the desire for it. So I went to live in the monastery. I got so much more out of it. It's still a daily part of my life.
Really?
But I came back through this, through science. I was hired by a company at the time selling a blue-green algae. I'm sure we can cover that. And that's what led to the discovery of everything that we're talking about here in terms of stem cells. And I'm sure that what I observed there with stem cells is a continuation of all that work with the mind.
Have you gone to Dave's biohacking conference before?
We are the title sponsor of the conference. Yeah.
Okay. I remember a blue-green algae years ago when I went in LA, and it was fascinating information. I thought it was a woman that was leading a demo of it and like talking about it, but I don't know, maybe that was you.
Yeah, there's another company. Just to be clear, blue-green algae is a broad class of type of microorganism. Blue-green algae, normally in the marketplace, when we say blue-green algae, it refers to one type, which is the blue-green algae coming from Klamath Lake. Its name is Aphanisum amphilos aqua, or AFA. But blue-green spirulina is also blue-green algae.
Right.
So there's a group that is selling spirulina. It's a great product, but the effect on stem cells, we saw it with AFA.
Okay. So did you have any epiphanies when you went to the monastery? Did you have any transcendental experiences that showed you more of reality that just felt so real? Or, well, I say felt real because these things are hard to prove, but when they feel real, they are, in my mind.
I didn't realize that this discussion would go in that direction, but I love it. It was not when I was there. It's more after I came out and since then. So I've been doing this now for a lot of time and diving really deep into Probably the best way to summarize it, to make it understandable, is just like take near-death experience.
Right.
So your body is gone, your brain is flatline, and yet people come back with a greater sense of identity, a
Yeah.
greater understanding of themselves that is devoid of any regret, hate, rancor, sadness. There's none of this. There's
Yeah.
just like a very profound, logical, heart-centered understanding of their life. And if they come back, their life is changed. I'm not going to say that they embody what they were in terms of identity during that time of death, if you want. But the reason why I bring this up as an example is that what you experience in that moment is not a new thing that is born at your death. It's in you, right? It's in us right now. Is the identification with that story, that name, the past, the fear, the opinions, this whole ball of yuck that we identify with. If we separate ourselves from that, I think we can discover what is the deeper self. To me, that's the quest, is to find that deeper self. And when you touch it, the experience can be quite transcendental. So I had a chance to experience some of that. It's to the point where it's the only reason why we're here. There's no other reason. The only reason is to discover who we truly are.
I always feel like in science, especially, or sort of breakthroughs within culture, within new understandings of things, almost like you've seen something and you now have to figure out how to back the science up into it. We're like, okay, I know I feel so strongly about this. I need to understand scientifically how this is. Mm-hmm. Have you had anything like that happen?
So my training, I'm born a scientist. Like my mind just works like this. I just
look at you, science and spirituality, which are actually like this to me.
They're looking at the same thing from two different angles.
Yeah.
But I think I've realized pretty young that science was just a tool to assess reality. And it's a tool that can assess part of reality. It cannot assess the whole of reality. And a simple example is, for example, what is the greatest force in the world? Love I think, is the greatest force in the world. Is there such a thing as a love meter? Like, is the love of your child greater than the love of your mother or your husband or your partner? You can't put a number of this. It's impossible to measure love. And yet, it is the most consequential, most fundamental things in our world. Just that should basically make us snap out of the fact that the truth of reality is only what you can measure with a machine, which is what science is. If something you cannot measure, it's not real. I think we should really go beyond this. Yeah. In what you described before, those experience with the, double slit passing light and wave, in these, those studies are clearly telling us in the extrapolation of all of this that there is a quantum field that is basically like the void is way more full. Actually, everything is in the void.
Yeah. Have you heard of Nassim Haramein?
Yeah, I've read some of his thing. These are all pioneers who are basically opening a field that is going to come, put it in the next 20, 30 years. It's going to be kind of the basics of what we live with. We live almost like any human being lives in the world that is completely in their head. We pick up bits and pieces of reality. We make them make sense in our head. So we make a coherent world in our head, and we don't realize that it's only in our head that exists. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And everybody does that. And yet there's a place where we commonly all exist. And in order to have access to this, you have to subtract yourself. You have to subtract your ego, if you want, from the whole process. And that's a quantum field. And I think we're all moving in that direction. We have to, otherwise we'll self-destruct.
I believe that we're all actually our own little universe, because we see the world through our own specific lens. Everyone is different. I fumble around in wondering how objective reality really is when we all have our own lens. So like you said, we all come together and you have to lose something to agree upon world to live in, so that there's some organization, so that there's a way to coexist. But I do wonder about the reality of an actual objective reality.
Let me rephrase it differently. I'm not saying that it's going to be an answer to your question. If you meditate and focus on each thought, but you don't do anything with them, You don't dance with them. Don't judge it like this is a good thought, this is a bad thought. The moment we think that, it's too late. We're caught in the process. Just observing it, stop it and keep it in the field of awareness and do nothing with it. And suddenly you can feel where it's coming from. You sense where it's coming from. And they all come from fear. Fear is the basis of all these thoughts. And it's the fear of something that you didn't like in the past coming back. Just look at any thought that we have all day long, since the day we are born. You know, Mark Twain was saying, I spent all my life resolving problems that fortunately never happened. And this is what we do with our brain. Constantly thinking of things because we want to make sure that things we're afraid of don't show up. Things we don't want don't show up. Things we want, make sure they show up. And oftentimes, you know, you want to make money because you're afraid of poverty. So somewhere fear drives everything, and fear is based on all of our memories, all the stuff from our past, and it's different for everybody. So the same event goes through all the filters of these fears that are different for everybody. But the moment you discover that you're a different entity that does not belong to this body, that is immortal. So fear of what? The moment you lose the fear of death, you lose all fears. So when you lose all of that, I think that's the point when two people can look at a reality and see the same reality, unfiltered by all these filters of fear.
Yeah.
That's the common reality that I'm talking about. We may not all experience it the same, but we won't disagree on it. Like we will, heart-centered, we will have the same experience of that reality. Let's.
Do you think fear is?
It's not, so maybe at least we need to try it together.
Do you think that having no fear is the objective of the human experience to arrive there, or do you think fear is just sort of inherently part of the experience that gives rise to both sides, right? That gives rise to the love when you have the other side, and that this is just a reality of duality, of polarity.
Fear is a component of the human experience. You know, if a semi is coming right in front of you as you're crossing the street, you better have fear to save your skin. So I think fear is a component. Outside of those moments that are really about survival, I think fear is a product, is an extension of the fear of death. The moment that we don't fear death because we've discovered that we're not this body, then all these fears kind of go away. I'm not saying the body does not feel them, but it's easy to just put it aside and just say, no, that's a fear that comes from what I perceive, and I don't need it. And I think we can totally do that. I don't think it's a necessary component. This is an open discussion. In no way am I telling you I own the truth here. I had an experience once that really have transformed my vision of a lot of things. So it was on the day of our wedding with my wife, Stephanie. And so the universe gave me a great gift on that day.
Yeah, what a day.
We're in a temple. It was at our ashram in Canada. So we're in a temple, and suddenly, like out of nowhere, I'm looking around and everything around me becomes like so vivid. The colors are so vivid. Like there's a column, like a wooden column. It's alive. It's just like, and as the procession is, the ceremony is going on, I'm kind of realizing I need to pay attention, but what is around me is just like, oh, so I'm sure nobody noticed, but I'm looking at everything. And then suddenly the impression came in like, what is this all made of? It looks like it's all made of the same thing. And suddenly I knew that the fabric of all of this was love. Love was the matrix and the fabric of all of it. And still, now I don't have the experience of it back, but I remember it very well, that the brain puts labels on everything, but the background, everything, the carpet, the clothing that we had, everything was made of that same thing. And it makes me realize that love is really the only thing, and there's no hate. Hate is basically the darkness of it, like the absence of it. It's not a thing. The moment you fill it with the reality of love, it disappears. So I think it's more like one thing in the absence of it.
Because what it sounds like there could be a plant medicine experience. It's a sort of like it's a transcendental experience. It's somewhat out of the realm of our normal reality. I feel like all of this lands so hard. And like you said, I have very good memory for it. When it goes from just being in the mind, which I'm curious your thoughts, because you study the brain, you study the mind and the brain, when it's a full body experience, because undoubtedly it was happening, you saw it, you thought it, but you felt it too. There was like, you could feel it in your whole body, probably this love, this wave, this tingling, even goosebumps maybe. But I find that when you're in those experiences, because it is full body, there's this etch in your mind that never goes. Every experience I've ever had like that, I remember vividly, no matter how long ago it was. Why is that?
I don't know. I guess I would venture an answer just to say, well, I firmly believe the memory from the brain is just like the day-to-day memory. The deeper memory of the things that really matter are not necessarily in the brain. Like they're written somewhere else. Otherwise, how could we have past life, memories? So I think that there's another place where those kinds of memories are recorded, but it's like it's one in the same. In our experience, they're all together.
True,
And
right?
you would say like there's these two memories. I would say you can almost recognize them because one of them is to an extent stress inducing, even happy experience and happy memories can be stress inducing. The other one is profoundly peace inducing. And my experience of it is that the signature of it is gratitude. When you're in these experience, the only thing that comes out of you is that you're grateful for that moment. So to me, that's the signature of these moments. And they stay even when we remember it, like there's not even a desire to intellectualize it. It's more like, I'm just grateful for the experience.
Oh, wow. I love that. Well said. And we've always heard through religious teachings and especially how important gratitude is. So that makes sense. All right, we'll talk about stem cells some more now. So back to stem cells. Sorry for the detour. I love philosophizing about how it could all be working and why it works like it does and other people's thoughts. So thank you for sharing all those thoughts and the stories. So back to stem cells. I was asking how they know what to become in the body and how they know what to become when they're injected into the body. How does that happen?
Tons of science has been done on stem cells, and at the same time, very little has been done because we're so early in that process. And a lot of research has been done where people are looking for things and not necessarily people are not looking. And that's an area that requires more research. But from what is known right now, every single tissue of your body has very specific molecules, proteins that belong to that tissue. If I give you a cell and you need to identify what kind of cell it is, we just incubate that cells with all kinds of antibodies specific to protein that are specific to tissues. And the antibody that will tie to that cell will not tell you, oh, that's a brain cell, that's a liver cell, that's a heart cell. So what I'm telling you here is that these are very well known. So each tissue has those kinds of components. So when a stem cell gets into a tissue, gets into contact with cells of a tissue, those molecules basically communicate with cells. So that's one way of basically, through this contact, a signal is sent to the nucleus of the stem cells, and now the gene coding for being a heart cells, a brain cell, a skin cell.
So it knows what's wrong. Meaning the information is like where repair is needed. That's the information arriving at the stem cell.
Okay, let me go one step before. So every cell of your body contains the entire DNA. It's the same DNA in every single cell. So a cell that has activated part of your genome that will make that cell become a heart cell is the exact same genome in the pancreatic cell that make that cell activate another part of the genome to become a pancreatic cell. But it's all the same. So you've got a stem cell that is blank in its ability to activate any part of that gene. So when that cell has been either released by your bone marrow because you just had an injury and now it's called forth, so that release is triggered naturally, they are your repair system. After a severe injury, accident, you can, in a matter of a few days, increase like tenfold the number of stem cells in circulation. So they go everywhere in the blood, and how do they find where to go is that the area that is injured will then start to release another compound The one that has been the most documented is stromal-derived factor 1, SDF1. So SDF1 will connect with a receptor at the surface of the stem cell, and as soon as that connection happens in the fine capillaries of the injured tissue, that stem cell will express adhesion molecule, will cling to the capillary. And then the whole process of either releasing exosomes or cytokine to stimulate repair in the tissue, or crossing across the capillary wall, get into the tissue, and upon contact with cellular debris of that tissue, it activates the transformation of that blank cell into a cell of that tissue, repairing the tissue. So that's kind of the process. Another process that has been documented is that some stem cells have a form of phagocytic activity, like a macrophage. They would engulf a damaged cell, and by engulfing it, they identify what it is, and it triggered their transformation into that cell. There's two mechanisms that have been at least revealed or described in the scientific literature. Okay. But it is your repair system. There's no question about it. And to me, it's interesting because it's one of those things that have been like hidden in plain sight. Like everybody on this planet, no exception, have had an injury, a broken bone, a cut. Everybody has an injury. Everybody witnessed the body heals on its own.
Yeah.
But how?
Right. Why is it taking so long?
Or well, when you're older, why is it taking so long?
No. Why is it taking so long for science to discover?
I mean, it's like so many things in our evolution. Until you have the tools to see something, you don't see it. Remember, it makes me think sometime of this obstetrician, Hungarian obstetrician, I think it was like 1850, discovered that on the day that he, do you know the story?
No.
On the days where you go from the autopsy room to the surgery room, on those days he realized he has a very high rate of mortality. So he's thinking, maybe I have a death factor that I bring on my hands from one to the other. So he started to scrub his hands like really thoroughly to remove that death factor, and it took care of the problem. So he starts to tell his peers, you should scrub your hands, before a surgery. But it's nonsense. Nobody believes him. So it took him 25 years to convince his peers to wash their hand before surgery. And that is around the time, like 1870 to 1880. It's around, these are the 10 years where the cause of pneumonia, cholera, all those types of disease, transmittable disease or disease that you get from water, diarrhea, all of this, it was a bacteria, it was different types of bacteria. So now there was a sense of why you're washing your hands. Now, how long do you think it took for hand washing to become mandatory in American hospitals?
Once they discovered it, after those 25 years, immediately.
A century.
A century.
A century.
Oh, it's like
hand
right
washing.
now when they say take the red 3 food dye out. It's like, but it'll take a couple of years. It's like, but really?
When a concept is novel and the mind has no point of reference to just say it's that better, it's that more, it's that different. If there's no point of reference, you hear it, and I think the mind doesn't know what to do with it. It just does not sink in. So we have witnessed that we repair, but without an understanding that there was such a thing as a stem cell. What I learned in school is that it's your immune system that repairs. I've never had a class on it.
Right.
The teacher would say, among other things, and with myself or anybody ever stopping and just say, okay, which part of the immune system is doing it? Because the answer would have been, we don't know. So it was never a thing until we finally realized it's your stem cells. And it's a crucial part. Without it, you would not be alive today.
I suppose, like you said a little bit ago, with testing the stem cells for disease or any abnormalities that would be transferred on, you need to know what to test for. So if you don't even know to test for the stem, you have to know, right? I think, right. Every now and again, I refer back to, it reminds me of the first time I interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson and asking him about what his biggest question is. And actually just my biggest fear is that we don't know the right question to even ask.
True.
Right? Because that's, this is sort of the brink of learning the next new thing. What about, so we've talked about stem cells a bit, and you mentioned PRP, but I feel like there's always been it seems like a practice of pairing the two. Is that true? And why would you pair PRP, stem cells and PRP?
I mean, the way, I don't know if they do it for that reason, but but it's done because it works. And I think what it does is that PRP does contain a lot of growth factors. So
Mm.
the moment that you couple growth factors with stem cells, growth factors or exosomes are the language of stem cells. So if you get an injection of exosomes, they work in you just because you naturally have stem cells that they can talk to. If you get stem cell injections, they work if you have your own exosomes to stimulate them and make them kick into gear. But if you do both of them, then the stem cells will enhance the exosomes or the PRP, and the PRP will enhance the stem cells. So it's a great synergy to do both together.
I'm sorry, PRP and exosomes are the same?
They're not the same. PRP contains growth factors.
What are exosomes? I've had all these things. I've had intravenous exosomes done, topical exosomes, so topical PRP, injected stem cells. So what is exosome? Like what is each one? And then is there an actual specific role of each of these, or are we learning that they're actually very similar in nature?
It's a little bit, it's going to, I don't know if I have a good analogy in mind, but it's when you discover something and from the angle under which you discovered it, you think that it's just that. And then later you realize it's everywhere. Like
Sure.
prostaglandins. Prostaglandins were first isolated from the prostate. So they were called prostaglandins. Every single cell of your body makes it. Like the name now is pointless. Like it's no longer pointing, but it was discovered that way. Stem cell research is becoming more and more of that. We talk about it from one angle and we realize it's actually everywhere. So zome means, let's say like a pocket, like a little sphere that contains something. So a liposome is a sphere of lipids that contains something. An endosome is a little sphere of lipid that gets inside the cells. An exosome is one that gets outside of the cell. So exo means external. So all it is, it's a bunch of growth factors that the cell has released, and to protect them, they are into this little sphere of lipid that we call exosomes. But the moment you start to spin your blood with a population of V cells and platelets, which release a lot of these compounds, well, they're released into little spheres that are called exosomes. Now you could, normally when they extract exosome, they'll tell you no, exosomes come from stem cells. Well, it's true. If you grow stem cells and stem cells start to talk to each other, then when you remove the stem cells, your liquid in which they were growing is filled with these little spheres. So we take that and we inject that. We say, we give you exosomes, but exosomes are everywhere in your body. These cells are always talking to each other. So when you combine your PRP with your stem cells, it's a soup. It's a soup of stuff that is communicating together.
I listened to this clip on Instagram the other day, and it was somebody talking about all the ways that they could grow their penis. And one of the things they said was that there's the pea shot, and you can grow your penis by 2 inches. So every man in the world would like to know, is this true?
The size of your penis depends on the blood vasculature, all the blood vasculature in the penis, and you can probably extend it. The possibility is there. To tell you that everybody that does it will get 2 inches, right now I would express a lot of doubts. But physiologically, could the treatment deliver some extension? It's quite possible. But I don't think it will do it alone. I think there needs to be like mechanical extension to create the stimulation for the need for these blood vessels to develop.
Like a stretching of sorts?
Well, the infamous pumps that have been there for a long time. Yeah, you couple the two together, there's probably something there.
When I went and got stem cells, obviously I had it done intravenously, but also a lot of people were getting orthopedic injections into all their joints. So what are some of the most popular and other ways to what can they do? And I'm like almost thinking this is maybe a silly question because it sounds like the body already informs the stem cells once they're put into you as to what they do. So I don't know if it's actually that important that they're put in a specific place or not.
I mean, yes and no. No, in the sense that they will find their way where to go. Where it is relevant is for two general types of situation. Areas that have very, very poor vasculature, like joints. So in these areas, then if you deliver the stem cells in the area, then you have way more chance that the stem cells will engraft there, and then we'll bring some benefits there. And it's not my expertise, but I have worked with people who do this, and they've pretty much all shared the same thing. You really need to have somebody who knows what they're doing, because you inject like 1 millimeter beside where you should inject, and it won't give you the results that you're looking for. So you need somebody. So it's a world where I think medicine couples with art. Like, you need somebody who is really good with their hands and really knows where to put these stem cells. But if you put them in an area with poor vasculature, your retina has very poor circulation. So there are a few areas where stem cells injected in your blood vasculature is not really good. It can. We have seen it. I have seen I work with plants that trigger the release of your own stem cells. I have seen cartilage being rebuilt in joint just by triggering the release of your own stem cells. But it's not happening very often. So in these cases, injection in the joint is a really, really good approach. The other way, but it's not done a lot because it's fairly invasive. I mean, an injection in your joint is invasive, but it's to understand that when you put the stem cells systemically, it's put in a vein. The first place that this blood is going to go is to your lung. So when stem cells go into your lung, some of these stem cells are fairly big, so they get captured into the microvasculature of your lung. So if you inject 100 million stem cells, the estimation is that you have about 15 million of them that will survive the process. So you don't get like a great survival rate. And some of work has been done mostly in animals. It's been done in human as well. Is that you go through, let's say as an example, the femoral artery, and you go with a catheter, and then you just move it to the entrance of where you want these stem cells to go. So if you want to put them in the heart, then you move the catheter just at the entrance, if you want, of the coronary artery, and then all these stem cells suddenly flood the heart. So then you really maximize the number of stem cells that will go into that organ. But it's not done a lot, surprisingly. And probably one of the reasons somebody who was doing these things in the heart a number of years ago told me that at some point he didn't have access to an operation room to do it. So at times he would just do it systemically. And over time, he said he realized that the benefits 6 months later are actually not a whole lot different. They're just faster when you inject them in the heart. But at the end of the day, it's not a whole lot different. So it's less invasive, less risk. So now he only does IV injection. So, but I don't do those kinds of treatments. So I'm telling you here what I know of them.
Stem cells can become anything, and that sounds like a building process. So first check, is that true? Could they become bone? Can they become muscle? Can they become cartilage? Can they become ligaments? Can they become anything? Okay.
Become pretty much anything.
Okay. So check that off. Now, can they correct anything? Can they correct a disease?
If I tell you they can become everything, and there could be people out there who will come back.
Sounds like God.
Here's that study. Exactly. But here's that study where it didn't work. Well, let me show you one where it worked. So at this point, we're in a place where I think the best assessment of the literature is like, there's plenty of evidence that they can become everything. Let's figure out why they don't always become everything. And let's figure out why in some cases they don't work. Because I oftentimes start my lectures on this to really like shock the minds. I show a video. This is the work of Doris Taylor. So she took the heart of a mouse, digested the heart with digestive enzymes. So after about 12 hours, the only thing left is the soft skeleton of the heart, like the collagen of the heart. And on that collagen that still retains the trace that it was a heart, they took stem cells from that same animal and just lay them on that collagen. And within a week, you get a beating heart in the test tube. This is to show you, this is the raw power of stem cells when nothing stands in their way of what they can do. It is profoundly impressive. So to me, the question is like, okay, now let's figure out why this does not always happen in the body. But I can show you study of stem cells just triggering the release of stem cells. Injection is one thing, but just triggering the release of your own stem cells from your own bone marrow, basically boosting your natural repair process. And we can show reversal of severe heart disease, reversal of Parkinson, COPD, atherosclerosis, hypertension, kidney failure, liver failure, COPD, Parkinson, Alzheimer's.
Wow.
I mean, the list keeps
Is
growing.
this STEM Regen, your company STEM Regen? Is that what that product does? How do we do that? Because that sounds like the easiest, best, safest thing to do is to regenerate your own.
Well, I don't want to put one against the other, meaning like this is better than stem cell injection. Let's put aside stem cell injection. Let's just understand you release stem cell. Here's a simple analogy. I gave that to my last lecture. I think it really hit people. So I'll share it with you. Imagine everything you know about your immune system, you toss that aside. And I'm talking to you about this new treatment where we can extract a type of cells from your blood. It's called an NK cell. And that cell can find and eliminate viral infected cells or cancer cells in your body. So if one day you have cancer, you give some of these NK cells, they grow them, they freeze them, and the day you have cancer, I can inject you in actual killer cells. I mean, you want to line up and go and get that cell, that extraction of cells. Now, remember everything you know about the immune system. You've had NK cells in your bloodstream since the day you're born. Every time you have a cold, they heal you from your cold.
Oh,
You
wow.
have cancer every day of your life. NK cells take care of it. It's
Right.
been there all along. The treatment is real. You can now go and extract your NK cell, prepare them if you ever need them on the road. But the question is why? You have them every day. Your stem cells are exactly the same thing. They're there since the day you're born. They are your repair system. Every day of your life, you release them and they go repair what needs to be repaired, or they replace the cells that are being lost. So because everything in your body go through a process of tissue turnover. You get a new skin every month, a new liver every 2-3 years. Even your heart that was believed historically to not repair, we know today that it's about a 1% a year turnover. So when you reach 50 years old, you have had about half of a new heart. It's amazing.
Wow.
So turnover means every day that I lose cells, I need stem cells to replace the cells that are being lost.
Mm-hmm.
But I am born with red marrow that makes stem cells, and it rapidly converts into yellow marrow that essentially does not make stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
That conversion is quick. At some point in your 30s, you've lost 90% of it. So there's a point in your 30s, early 40s, you realize
90% of your ability to convert?
no,
90%
90% of the
90% of what?
number of stem cells in your bloodstream available to participate in this process of repair that we're talking about.
By what age again, did you say?
In your 30s.
Oh,
So
that sucks.
early 40s, you're in that phase. And now you realize it's true. I don't recover as fast as I used to. If I have an injury, it doesn't repair as fast. But we can go further than this. The moment you understand that all tissues are in the process of turnover, that means you lose cells every day. Stem cells replace these cells. There's a point in our lives we don't have enough stem cells to offset cellular loss, and now the deficit that starts to accumulate. So I put this view about 10 years ago in the Journal of Stem Cell Research and Therapy. I said, if this is all true, that means this decline in stem cells is the fundamental cause why we developed age-related diseases. So to prove that, let's go and count the number of stem cells in people who have developed all kinds of age-related disease, and we should see that there are fewer stem cells than a healthy person. Now there's about 50 of those studies that have been done, and you take people with heart disease, cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, hypertension, erectile dysfunction, diabetes, liver failure, kidney failure, COPD, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, lupus, arthritis, migraine, obesity. Each study done delivers the same data. All these people have 50% or less than when you find in a healthy person of the same age. So to me, I think the core aspect of aging, longevity is how many stem cells are there in your bloodstream. And that's where, to do the day-to-day process of tissue repair. And that's where I think tapping into plants that trigger the release of your own stem cells have an impact, because it's a day-to-day thing. You cannot travel to Costa Rica every day that you go to the gym and work out, but you can release your own stem cells. And to show the extent of where this can go, we do have 2 studies ongoing right now. One is with chronic stable congestive heart failure. One is with Parkinson. So we're now doing the analysis for a preliminary report. These studies are ongoing. But the first 10 patients with chronic stable congestive heart failure after 6 months have regained normal heart function. These are people that medicine, whatever medicine could do is where they were. We took them, and 6 months later, they have normal heart function. And we have something similar with Parkinson. I am not saying stem regen will cure heart disease. All I'm saying is that the human body as a natural repair system, it declines as we age. The problem that you have at 50 or 60, you did not have them at 20 and 30
Right.
because you had stem cells to offset cellular loss.
Mm-hmm.
If you just boost your ability to repair, you're just giving back to your body its natural ability to do what stem cells are doing, which is repair, and your body does it. It's really that simple.
Sounds simple. Sounds like a magic formula. So how are you saying that you add stem cells in because you've had a decline, or are you saying there's a process that helps you boost your own natural production?
Imagine, I'm trying to find a way to explain it easily, and it's not easy. The best example that I come up with is kind of clunky a little bit, but imagine here that you're born with 100 wells. Wells, if you take 2 buckets of water from your well, 15 minutes later, 2 minutes later, you are at the same level. Take 20 buckets, give it 5 minutes, you're at the same level. Take 100 buckets, give it 15 minutes, you're at the same level. It doesn't matter, a well produces.
Okay.
As you age, you're losing wells. But the red marrow that you're left with will release whatever your body needs. So we have found plants that will do, just like you have molecules that will do trigger autophagy. They're called like fasting mimicking compounds.
Mm-hmm.
Some plants contain injury mimicking compounds. They make your body react as if you had an injury. You have no injury. It just tweaks the process of stem cell. It interferes with the process of stem cells adhering to the bone marrow environment, and they get released and they show up in your bloodstream. And when they are in your bloodstream, they do what stem cells do. They do repair. So you simply releases more from your bone marrow. I briefly talked about the blue-green algae before. So in 1995, I was hired by a company called Celtech at the time. They were selling this product called Super Blue-Green Algae right after the passage of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. So my job was to describe what were the mechanisms of action behind the benefits of that plant so that they can have science to back up their marketing claim, which was now part of the law. So very quickly, we identified the benefits on inflammation, on immunity, on the mind. People were experiencing like mental clarity, a sense of mental energy. We found that this specific blue-green algae from Klamath Lake, AFA, contains phenylethylamine, a molecule that your brain makes that in biochemistry they call the molecule of love, or the molecule of joy. When you feel good, your brain makes that compound. So you consume it and you get this sense of like, hey, you know, the financial problem that I had yesterday, I still have them today, but I'm fine. You know, life's good. So we did all this work, but as I'm doing all of this, I came across people reversing multiple sclerosis, liver failure, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, and so on. And the cases were not, I mean, some of these cases were really impressive, but for me as a scientist, the big question was, what is this plant doing to help someone's liver, someone else's pancreas, someone else's lung, someone else's brain, someone else, so skin. So what is the one thing that it could do to touch so many different aspects of human health? So for many years, we had no idea until January 2001, I came across the first article documenting stem cells going from the bone marrow to the brain and becoming a brain cell. As a neuroscientist, I know that the brain does not repair, and I've learned that stem cells can only become blood cells. So I thought it was fascinating. So I went to the local library to see what else I could find. I found another study showing stem cells going to the liver and becoming liver cell, another one to the heart doing the same thing. So I just thought, if stem cells can become heart, liver, and brain, what could be a physiological process that will make them become those three and not the rest? Makes no sense. So that means it's just a matter of time. Scientists will show they can become everything else. So let's assume they can become everything else. That means they have to be the repair system of the body. So after about 6 years of doing research with that plant, for the first time I had an idea, very far-fetched, but the idea was, what if stem cells are the repair system? And what if that plant, just like plant stimulates the immune system, that plant stimulates the repair system? So we acquired a flow cytometer to count stem cells in our blood, and we started on ourselves. We took a blood sample, took this blue-green algae, took another blood sample an hour, 2 hours later, and then we discovered that's what the plant was doing. It was triggering the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So I shifted everything, and that's when I started to work only in that field. So over the years, of the 12 or so plants that we have looked at, the top 5 plants that act as stem cell releasers, if you want, this is what we have in stem regen release. So you take 2 capsules, you release about 10 million of your own stem cells within 2-3 hours. So that's what it is.
So let's talk a little bit about the frequency. I want to talk about quality and then frequency. So since you were saying take it every day, my dog Ella, sweet Ella, sleeping in the corner, she has some like knee issues, and she's had stem cells done a couple of times, and I had fat stem cells harvested. So there's, I think they had like 19 doses of stem cells available for her. She's had 2 of them now, but she's achy, like her joints are achy.
How old is she?
9. But I wonder how often I can give her stem cells, and how often what is the right frequency? If you could do it just to the highest benefit of the dog or the person, because I'm guessing it probably works very similarly. What would be the frequency?
There's 2 answers to the question. If cost is not an issue, I
Right.
would say you should do these injections as frequent as possible, but not within the time frame when you can have some sort of cytokine storm or a reaction that makes it a little bit worse. Which normally would be like within 2 to 4 weeks, everything, you're past all of this. So you do it every month, then that could be a nice approach. Oftentimes, clinics will tell you wait 6 months, but it's also because the full impact of one injection can continue to develop over many months. So you want to see, do I really need a second one? So you want to have this full development. But if you're sitting on those samples and they're there, and she's 9, so she may not go for more than another 3-4 years, then maybe you just say, hey, sorry,
she's going to live till 20. Okay.
20. There you go.
Just like I'm going to live till 120.
I can tell you that we have a dog or pet version of stem regen, and the results that we have are honestly mind-boggling.
I will be your
like
number
for
one
example, do you know Nat Nidam?
No.
Okay, cool, very cool. I'll introduce you to her. She's very cool in the world of biohacking. So one day she shares with me, she has her 14-year-old dog, and the dog can no longer stand up. He's kind of spoiling itself, cannot shook its head anymore. So apparently it's very important for a dog. So you cannot stand up. So she said, we need to go and put the dog down. So I said, hey, I'll ship you some of the product. Give it to your dog and let me know, if you see anything. So about 2 weeks later, her response was 2 videos that she's showing me where the dog is just running after, like she throws ball and the dog is running. I've heard this, I don't know how many times. Dogs and horses.
Wow.
I don't know how many times I've heard this.
Wow. And this is also called stem regen. Like someone could go
available. It's R&D. So it's done. I have it. We have not released it just because we're so busy right now. So we have not released it, but I have samples. I can send you some and sprinkle that on the food of your dog. And I would be surprised that you don't see something. We've seen so much of it.
Wow. Done and done. What has gone around in my head out of curiosity since I did stem cells and over the last few years since then is just the quality. Like, should you get your own, or are umbilical cord stem cells good enough? And sort of what has the best bioavailability? What is the safest process? Doesn't necessarily mean the easiest, but what is the best, safest, has the highest efficacy? What would you tell someone to do if they just were ready to sign up for whatever program was the best?
It's a tough question because I wouldn't say like it's the same answer for everybody, number one. Number two, you will talk to a lot of people out there and they will like strongly argue opposite views. So I will try to give you the most objective approach, or the most objective answers. It's a force on the marketplace. In the early days of stem cell research, pharma felt profoundly threatened because the entire medical world today is only patching the symptoms. So you have insulin, I'm going to sell you insulin every day of your life for the rest of your life. It is an amazing business. Mm-hmm. And now comes something that cures. It is the biggest threat in the history of modern medicine. And if you do something with stem cells, quite frankly, you can go to any doctor to take your fat, your blood, your bone marrow extract, spin it, give it back to you. The only people who made money is the doctor, the people selling syringes and centrifuges. So it's a complete disruption of medicine as we know it. For that reason, tons of money was spent to make the population believe that stem cells are dangerous, they don't work, and if they do, it's umbilical cord stem cells, but in 50 years. It's not available right now. And a lot of people,
I mean, I had when it came to my dog's knees, the very first thing they wanted to do like TPLO surgery and all, and they're like, and I said, what about stem cells? So I'd just done them, and she's like, they don't work, and I was like,
exactly.
What? And then I spoke to another doctor, and he's like, yeah, she's red flag. She's an idiot.
Yeah. So that's the reason. There were millions, tens of millions have been invested in PR. Make the general population not really trust stem cells, to give them the time to develop something that they could wrap their mind around it to productize stem cells and be also the carrier of that kind of treatment.
Of course.
So until recently, still the doctor that would do your fat stem cells, your blood stem cells, your bone marrow stem cells was really the best and the most convenient. Now I have colleagues who used to do that, and they have stopped doing this. And the main reason, I'll say it just as it is, the main reason they're using umbilical cord stem cells, not because they're better, it's because it's easier and cheaper for them to do it. So it's a cost, a risk, and then work. It's just easier. They can do it faster. It's less problems. Yeah. So now we're shifting and they're going to umbilical cord stem cells. So we need to realize that in everything that I'm going to tell you, I'm saying that story just to understand in all the opinions that we hear about, there's a lot of money behind what is being done. And the doctor that will back umbilical cord stem cells because they were told by so many people that they're the best, oftentimes they're speaking with a lot of sincerity, a lot of honesty. It's just like this whole background story is not always in the forefront. I just wanted to say that as a preamble to what you can find out there in the marketplace. They're all good. Umbilical cord stem cells are younger stem cells, therefore more effective. They are cheaper. They are still expensive, but cheaper. You go there, you have them. There's no pre-process of cultivation. It's quick. You go there, you have umbilical cord stem cells. It makes them a stem cells of choice. There are some potential issues. We talked about them. I don't think they amount to a real risk, but there are some issues in terms of genetic transfer of problems, infections that could happen during the process. And so these are the main issues that could exist with umbilical cord stem cell injection. And the fact that it's not a problem for you for a treatment, but it's not an eternal process. There's a point we won't have enough birth to have all the stem cell treatment. So we need to look at something else, and it's in the work. There are better stem cells than umbilical cord stem cells. They've just not been productized yet, but that's one avenue. Fat stem cells are not as potent as umbilical cord stem cells, but they're not very far. They're your own, but because they're dormant essentially in your body, they are much, much younger than your bone marrow stem cells. So they're a good source of stem cells. Most people have plenty of fat to ensure stem cells for their next 10 lives. So you can have as much as you want. So it's not a problem. So you can extract them. They're good stem cells. And they're a good system now to collect them, freeze them, and preserve them and use them later on. Yeah. The one that is probably the easiest access is the V cell. They are in your blood right now. You take a sample of your blood, you spin it. There's lasers that can be used to activate these stem cells. They are easy access, easy to use. They're extremely potent. When I say
that's just from blood.
They are from your blood. We can have them in the bone marrow. They're also in muscles, but the easiest access is the blood.
Right.
And they can become, studies have shown that they can even become eggs and sperm. So and it's that way that they're like quasi-embryonic.
Wow.
Like they're very potent stem cells. So you can extract them, inject them. Some groups are doing this, inject them in ovaries, and they can be super powerful for fertility, as an example. So good practice. These are, and bone marrow, you can go and have an aspiration of bone marrow stem cells. Right now, in front or alongside all of these other stem cells, it's a declining practice just because it's not convenient. But they're good stem cells as well.
Are they considered the best, just not by much?
They are
Because I was
better.
also told the hip, like
Yeah.
when is the hip bone is the best quality of stem
Well,
cells.
it's the most numerous. So
Oh, okay.
if you go and you extract them, they are in your hip, they are in your skull, sternum, in your ribs, vertebra. But you would have to
Those all
go in.
sound like terrible injection points.
They're extraction points,
Yeah.
but volume wise, your pelvis is the only place where you can have in
Ah,
one aspiration. So that's why they go there. They are probably your most potent stem cells, overall more potent than fat stem cells, but they age as you age.
mm.
So they're not as effective as when you were young. That's the argument pointing to use umbilical cord stem cells. But what we talk about is releasing your own, not as a one-time event, but just do that every day over long periods of time. And the heart study that I'm talking about before, well, these are people that have between, I think it's like 58 to 75 years of age. They're not young people.
Right.
So their stem cells, although they're older, they have worked. So the point here is that the recognition that older stem cells are not as good as young stem cells have evolved into a general understanding out there on the web, in YouTube. I've heard it so many times. Past 40 years, your stem cells are worthless. It is absolutely untrue. That study is a clear example of this. People up to their, in their 70s and even older repair very well just by releasing their own stem cells. I think the leverage here is that they're not as effective, but if you release them every day, the cumulative impact of these stem cells adds up and it becomes fairly significant. So these are like the different types of stem cells and how you can utilize them.
I mean, like I talked about going to Costa Rica, but what is legal now? Like what's available, what's not available in the United States? How do people actually get this done outside of your company, STEM Regen, and being able to go get the actual supplement itself and boosting your body's ability to release its own? Where do people go? And what can they get
Well,
done?
StemRegen, the website, stemregen.co is the place to get the product. But stem cell injection, the question is difficult to answer because as strange as it is, there are very few regulations preventing the use of stem cells in the US.
Right.
It's the threat of those potential regulation. And if you do it and you advertise it too much, then the FDA visits your place and now you become in their like
So it's actually illegal.
focus
So
point.
it is illegal to do stem cell.
No, it is not illegal. What
Oh,
is illegal is that whenever you do something and you do enough of a processing to make it into a drug, then the facility where it's done needs to be set up and operated as a pharmaceutical location, a pharmaceutical site. That's their argument. So the doctor's clinics that is doing a stem cell extraction, the processing of that extraction, does it amount to making a drug or not?
huh.
So it says, of course, it amounts to making a drug.
So even if
And
you have like a device to spin down blood into platelets, into PRP, that's considered still like wow,
that's the
that's
question. Is
bullshit.
it or is it not? So
Huh.
their argument is that it is. The doctors and the industry say it's not. We're taking your own body and you're putting it, we're putting it back
Yeah,
into
I
the
mean,
body.
there should be a clear difference between synthetic and biological.
Correct. So there were lawsuits. So about 4 years ago, there's a group that won against the FDA. I just heard recently that in appeal, that was reversed. So now it's kind of in limbo.
Hmm.
How much can you really? And now they said, well, you cannot, if you use cells, then it needs to go through a different sort of certification or approval by the
They're just
FDA.
slowing it down as much as they can.
Exactly. So now you can get stem cells, but they won't call them stem cells. They will call them like exosomes, or they will give it another name. So like it's like it's the Wild West of something that, quite
I see.
frankly, we should really say, let's embrace this, because for the first time in our medical history, we can cure. We can put an end to a problem and really give you much better quality of life for the next 20, 30 years of your life so that you can fully experience consciousness. To me, that's the motivation. Because what is the life of a human being today? You cross 50, you start to develop some problems. Now you're absorbed by these problems. These problems become your life. And you sort of stolen from you is that ability to really tap into the wisdom that at 50, oftentimes like we start to ask the real question, in life.
Yeah.
And we're kind of led astray, or we stop going fully in there because they've had problems. So to me, it's like, let's give people another 20, 30 years of good health. And man, what would be humanity if people can really dive into greater wisdom?
Yeah.
To me, that's the future of everything that we're talking about. We should not have all these obstacles put to stem cell research. It is safe.
Yeah. Well, as my dad has said for my whole life, my sister's life, my mom's, is that without our health, we have nothing. So thank you for all your research. Thank you for this product. My dog thanks you. I thank you in advance. Thank you for the clarification on it all, because I was very confused about stem cells, PRP, exosomes, the where you get them from, the efficacy of them, and it really sounds like it's a bunch of green lights. Like this stuff is just all good, varying degrees of good.
And what remains to really be clarified with true, honest research, unhindered by regulation, is what is happening when it doesn't work. Why these injections didn't work in your dog? Why these stem cells that are regenerative? What stood in the way of their full expression? To me, this is going to be a big part of the research to come.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk again then.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.